The elephant in the middle of the room is Neptune at 2955, which retrograded July 1st, 2024, right before the Supreme Court decision made our president immune, basically. It hit 2955 on March 28th of 2025. I'm giving you these dates so that you can look at your own horoscopes to see if there was anything significant happening around these dates. Look at the house that not only Neptune is transiting in, but in this case, it would be the same house because it rules Pisces. But whenever you're using any of the 29-degree planets, you want to look at the house that that planet rules, because that house and its environment changes. So for you looking at this, when Neptune was at 29:55 minutes at March 28th of 2025, it is going to go direct December 10th, 2025, which will move forward the house that Neptune is in. It'll kick it forward, and it will be reaching a shadow position, for those of you who don't understand that, coming up to 29:55, not quite 0 or not quite 29 Pisces 59, but coming back to the shadow position, January 24th of 2026. And of course, on January 26th, 2026, will ingress into Aries and remain there for 14 years, almost 14 years. So I'm bringing this up. The shadow is very important. Now, even with Mercury or Venus or Pluto, any of the planets, when they come to the same degree and minute at which they went retrograde, I mark those as the shadows, because sometimes you'll see on those dates of the shadows, something pops up that's related to that particular planet that may have been delayed when it went retrograde. Another thing to remember, because when you look, this is a little deeper, but I think it's really important. When you look at a planet like, Neptune at 29 Pisces, Saturn's going to be at 29 Pisces, not only look at being at 29 degrees, but what decadent is it in? And for those of you who are really precise types, you can even go to the duad, if you will. The decadent, of course, is the first 10 degrees is the same as the sign it's in. The second 10 degrees is the second sequential. If it's a Pisces, the next one would be Cancer. And the last decadent, the last 10 degrees, is the last water sign, in this case, the last water sign, which is Scorpio. So Neptune has been for a while now in the decadent of Scorpio, which is ruled by Pluto. And I can say this because I am a Pisces. This is the toxic waste management station of the zodiac. All the toxic waste is flowing through this particular degree, both Saturn and Neptune. And I had a teacher, a really interesting teacher, very spiritual teacher, who used to say that if somebody has a strong Neptune in their chart and they have a painting, or you purchased a painting or something that they've made and you put it in your room, that painting will clean out the toxic waste. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I always thought that was fascinating. I've always loved paintings and icons. They're all over my house. And I think there is something right now about even cleaning out your system physically, to get clean in terms of your health, because it's going to be 29 degrees of Pisces is the Scorpio decadent. And actually, if you've ever studied the Alice Bailey school, which, Alice Bailey, was she real? Was she not real? We don't know. But in the Alice Bailey school, she assigned the planets that we traditionally assign to certain signs now to very different signs. For example, she assigned Mercury to Aries. She assigned the moon to Virgo, which really seems to work really well since Virgo is the biggest constellation in the sky. She also assigned Pluto to the sign of Pisces. And when I heard that, I thought, wait a minute, what's that about, right? But I think in a lot of ways, there is a kind of, it's a gentle Plutonian quality. I think with energy of Pisces, things get cleaned out. They just get cleaned out in a very different way than they normally be with Scorpio, which is very black and white. Either it's going to be alive or it's going to be dead. There's not going to be any in between. But there's a different energy here with these planets at the end of Pisces in the Scorpio decadent. And actually, in the last 2 degrees of Capricorn and Aquarius, which is basically the duads, right? Saturn and Uranus. Anarchy, chaos, change, obviously. Now, the other piece, if we look at Neptune at 29 Pisces, or even Saturn at 29 Pisces, but I'm particularly paying attention to Neptune. Neptune is archetypically, I do teach a course for Pam Bayer, who owns Midwest School of Astrology, and she has me every 2 years, I think it is, or 3 years, teach a beginning weekend of the archetypes and the planets. And I find that Neptune is very much associated with Dionysus, the god of the ecstatic experience, as well as the god of madness, where one can lose their head. And, if you look at the world right now, there's a lot of craziness. There's a lot of ecstatic experiences, and there's a lot of craziness going on. So much to the point where it feels like nothing makes sense anymore, almost as though one may be living in a video game that doesn't exist. I do remember a story, Liz Green, who was an amazing writer, is an amazing writer, and was an amazing teacher. I heard her speak in 1981, first time, when I was pregnant with my daughter. And I heard her speak subsequently in different eras too. And I remember her giving us one story. This is her story. I mean, it's a myth. It's a real myth. But the way she explained it was just wonderful. And basically, it's the story of Dionysus, Neptune, right? The wild and crazy guy, the rock and roll star, right? Coming to a village in which the king of the village is very Saturnian, Pentheus, the king, and he's got a mother who's a queen mother, and he's very strict, and he's got a lot of rules, right? Saturn. And of course, it's not Dionysus. I mean, he's got all these groupies following him, and he's causing chaos as he comes into this town. And this very strict king is saying, "You can't be here. I'm putting you in jail." Right? He's Dionysus. He's not going to stay in jail for long. He breaks out of jail. And in his craziness and madness and anger, of course, like a tidal wave, Neptune, he decides to send his magical energy or whatever to all the women of the town, where they become enamored of him. And they, like groupies, right? And they drop their pots and pans, they drop their children, they drop their husbands, they leave their homes, and they follow in a mad, orgiastic way up to the top of the mountain to be with Dionysus. So Liz continues with the story, and she says, well, there's two things. The husbands that tried to go after their wives were immediately killed. The husbands that were a little smarter stayed behind to see what was going to happen. That's kind of like never draw your sword unless you're going to plan to use it. So what happens is one of the women that's going to the top of the mountain is the strict king's mother, who's also become enamored and, almost hypnotically seduced, if you will. And because the women are in this kind of wild state, this king says, I'm going to find out what's going on. So he dresses himself as a woman, and he goes and hides in the bushes to see what's going on. As all these women are coming down the mountain, his mother, the queen mother, is at the head of the line. But because the women are in this trance, that's the word I was looking for, they can also have this high intuitive, almost like nose for trouble, right? And they sense that this person hiding in the bushes is not a woman, but a man. They go after the king, they cut off his head, they put it on a stick, and leading the trail with the stick and the head of the king is the mother of the king. And Liz Green's line for this story of Saturn versus Neptune is, if you use your head, if you use your logic, if you use your head, you are going to lose it. And I feel that is very Neptune as it goes to this last degree. If you're trying to be logical about everything you're trying to do right now, it's not going to work. It has to be from a different level, an intuitive place. I call them your red flags. Every Neptune energy has red flags. If the red flag is coming up, this is not the right time, don't do it. You need more information. If you get more information, then your red flag will either stop warning you, or it'll keep coming up until you uncover everything. That actually just happened to me very recently in the last 10 days. And I made a decision based on exactly that feeling. My head was saying to do one thing, and it's a big move, but something inside said, you better check one more thing. And I did check one more thing. And then I was able to make the decision without so much logic as instinct. And I think that's how we have to operate with this 29-degree energy.